Our first topic this week is about employee and consumer relations or corporate relations. And I'm really pulling out the parts about employee and consumer relations because I think those are the most important parts for us to talk about today. So managing a corporate reputation is very important, and there's a lot involved in it. There's media relations, there's relationships with stockholders. So media relations is with reporters and editors, with stockholders, and of course with the consumer. We're going to focus and employees. We're going to focus on consumers and employees in this lecture. But right now, the setting is that there's a lot of distrust and suspicion of these huge corporations and businesses that we have around us that are, Amazon, that we get our products through them. They do shipping now. They have every single product that you want. They get it to you quickly. They have music. They have videos. Amazon, all of those things that they have. They have podcasts. They have their own cloud computing. They're doing all kinds of things that we don't even know about. Biggest company in the world. But there's a lot of kind of distrust of these corporations, not just the really huge ones, but of any business in general. So the role of PR is to really help your company think about their social responsibility and to be the eyes and ears of an organization and reputation management. So let's talk through those things today. First, American opinions about big business. Here's a stat for you. 45% of Americans think that executives of large U.S. corporations are trustworthy. So that's less than half. And by contrast, 79% of Americans trust their small business owner. So they trust the people that are around them that they know, but they don't trust these big monolithic companies that are around us. And corporate citizenship, 82% believe that good corporate citizenship contributes to meeting your financial objectives. 53% say that corporate citizenship is important to their customers, and I think we are seeing more and more of that these days. Corporate social responsibility is very important. A lot of corporations are seeing a lack of responsibility in our government, so they are starting to take the lead on things that affect them economically, like climate change, and trying to be better stewards of that in their own company, which might cost them more money, but also gives them a much cleaner, better social responsibility image. Patagonia is a great example of that. We've talked about them before. And so corporations, many people feel that they do have a responsibility to society. And so PR can really help contribute to having a solid corporate social responsibility. So consumer relations is, we're going to lead into that. The objectives is, of course, to retain your customers, to attract new customers, to market new products or services, and to handle complaints. So retaining customers is often overlooked, but it's very important. So a lot of companies now, stores are having those rewards programs and trying to keep you retained and trying to keep you happy. They are also identifying themselves in many ways with certain social issues so that they will attract more, loyal customers. So, for example, we can say that Chick-fil-A is attracting customers. They're closed on Sundays. They have a kind of a religious outlook to their company, and that attracts a certain set of customers. And then we have someone like Patagonia on the climate change issue and is a very defined image, and they are attracting customers because of that image that they have. Those are just two off the top of my head examples. Eddie Bauer is a company that I purchase a lot of travel clothes from, but also hiking, and I think they have the best coats in the business. All of our winter coats are from Eddie Bauer, and so they just have retained me. I get rewards from them. I know I'm older than most of you, but they market new products and services to me. If I have any complaints, which I usually don't, they handle them well. So just kind of an example of a company that I have a little bit of loyalty to because I like their travel and hiking products. So you also have to learn about communicating with customers. There are, of course, the traditional methods that have been used over time, the mass media, direct mail, I don't know if you even look at your mail anymore. I hardly do. Letters, face to face. But of course, that is in a process of change. It's in the last 5 to 10 years, and the consumers have more of a voice than ever. And of course, the root of this change is the internet. So today, companies can communicate with us in totally different ways than ever before. They can have their own websites and communicate with us through our accounts on those sites. They can send us emails. They can have blogs, and of course, social media, which many, uh, all big companies have a social media presence. Um, they're picking out their target audiences. My daughter even told me last week that the Washington Post is on TikTok. So they're trying to reach that younger audience. So that's just a random example, but they're all using these new techniques to reach out to their audiences. So we also have more access to information. We can also communicate with one another if we're happy about a product, if we had a bad experience. So customer expectations have grown a lot. We have more of a sense of entitlement because of this control and a sense of power. So if we don't like what a certain company is doing, we can make it known and communicate that on social media. In the past, you may have had to just write letters, but now you can communicate it all around the world in the click of a button. So now there's that change in dialogue. So the shift has happened where it was a monologue and now it's a multi-log. So a monologue is you think of one person talking and not really caring if anyone's listening or not. It's a very one-way process. You could at one time you could pick up a major publication and you knew what everyone was talking about because it was very there wasn't a lot of information out there like now we have information in websites and 24/7 TV channels, and we're bombarded with information. But this cycle is broken now. So it's not even a dialogue anymore. Which is still more of a sophisticated communication between the influencer and a communicator. Asking people what do you need? How can we make you more happy? To a multi-log. So now it's a lot of people, but the conversation is happening everywhere and it's taking place all around us. It's not just one conversation, it's multiple conversations happening between lots of different people about your brand. And so brands are really important now in shaping our identity, and those multi-log conversations are important in shaping the identity of a brand. So there's this changing landscape. It's no longer executives and meetings who are deciding what messages and branding gets out there. Anyone who wants to have a voice can get involved. And there is also still that lack of trust. And so now people are putting their trust in other consumers. Someone might see an ad, but it doesn't have the same amount of weight or resonance that another consumer's opinion has. So that's why consumers are going to forums and websites and looking at reviews. They're doing product comparison and reviews from other people. I do that all the time where I'm looking at reviews on whether it's Amazon or electronics website or something like that to give us information about what is the best product. We just bought a new washer dryer, kind of had an idea of what we wanted from the research I had done. Then we walked into the appliance store, a local one here in Rochester. And after talking to through the salesperson, kind of about some of our ideas, we ended up going with something totally different than I thought. But I was prepared and I had the information that I wanted to ask so that we could make a good decision. And I am very happy with the washer and dryer that we bought. So changes in perception, loyalty is redefined now. So there is a loyalty to a brand, but it's not the same that it once was. So many times the focus is on the product and not as much the company. So brand recognition is still very important, but someone might be um, loyal to a company's one of their brands, but not their others, because some of our big conglomerates have so many different brands that they produce. So this changing expectation, consumer have higher expectations. The product has to be quality, has to be at a good price, has to have some kind of value for us. So, and connecting with a brand causes us to, in many ways, causes us to meet those expectations. And don't know if I've said this before, but I'm a big Apple user, and I have been for 30 years. In my line of work, it was the only thing that I could even use in the 1980s and early 90s, because it was the Mac that first worked, did page layout and page design with Adobe and things like that. So I became a very loyal Apple customer way back then, when I was spending a lot more money on my computers than other people because it was doing the things that I needed it to do. So now that loyalty has maintained over all these years, and I'm very loyal to them and to their products that they have. However, saying that, as I've said in other videos, I have the new Echo that I got from Amazon. We have a couple of them in the house because I needed new speakers and I wanted them to be ones that could also be an assistant. And I looked at the Apple ones that they have available, but it was like 3 times the price of the Amazon one. So I went with the Amazon one. But that was kind of rare for me. My computer, my phone, my Apple TV, all of those things are with them. But it's just kind of an example of what I mean by this. There's that changing in perception that many of us are loyal to certain companies and brands, and it's going to change. Some of you may be loyal to Microsoft or to something else, and that's totally fine. We just have different needs that we might have with our computer system. So, just an example of that. Next, let's move to employee relations. I think this is one of the most overlooked part of corporate relations, but an organization's greatest resource are its people. And employee relations, they are the ambassador, they're the primary public for a corporation. And so PR often works directly with human resource professionals on employee communications. There are PR people that only work on employee communications, and I've done a little bit of that, but not solely. So I think it's a fun area to work in. But just think about this: you may shop at Walmart one day, and if you have a cashier who's really kind of, going through the motions and not very helpful and very kind of rude, makes mistakes, is really slow, that affects your reputation of the entire company, not just that one cashier. So that's why it's employees, they are the front line, they are the ambassadors, and it's important that you realize that, and that you realize that every employee is a spokesperson for your organization, for good or bad. So informed workers are also better workers. So that's where PR people come in. They can help communicate and inform what's going on in the company, which usually makes them feel better about their company. So what makes employees feel alienated or discouraged? Of course, restructuring and downsizing. Anytime there's layoffs or anything like that, that of course is not just discouraging to the people who get laid off, but it is to the entire organization because everyone starts fearing for their own job. There's the buyouts. There's rumors that might be being spread. Or if no one feels like they're in charge, there's not a plan, there's no strategy, and just a basic lack of trust that makes your employees might start looking for jobs elsewhere. So there is a changing workforce. In the past, many of us, maybe our parents or grandparents, worked for one organization, one company their entire career. I think my dad basically worked for 2 different companies, and one was bought by the other, so it really was the same company, it just changed ownership. But individuals today, most of us will have 4 to 6 careers in a lifetime. And more than 84% of employees don't have a union or any kind of representative to represent them. More than half of the women with children are working, so it is a changing workforce, and there are new stresses on that workforce as well. But there are certain companies that employees just love working for their companies. And Fortune always comes out with a list of these companies every year, the top 100 best companies to work for. And most of them have a very positive organizational climate. Wegmans is always in the top 5. It's a grocery store. We don't have them here, but in the South, and people are very loyal to them, but also employees really like working for them as well. And most of these companies, they will have trust with their employees, or employees trust their management. They have good communication. Employees are well informed, and they also have perks that they enjoy as well. So having an engaged workforce will help your company with the bottom line as well. If they are engaged, they feel like they're worthy and that they're informed, they will be more productive and more engaged with your company. They will help you achieve your goals. They'll understand the financial situation of your company, and how what they do matters and how it connects to the company's overall goals. But unfortunately, 71% of employees say that they are not engaged at work. And so these disengaged employees, some of you might feel that way as well about wherever you're working, but they cost the U.S. economy $300 billion a year because they're not as productive. High turnover is expensive for companies to keep retraining people and hiring people. And there might be lots of, they miss lots of work because they are just disengaged from what they are doing each day. But engaged employees, they help customers more. They believe they are important to the company, that they help the company succeed. And they're also more productive and profitable for your company, and they are also less likely to leave. So a PR person can help management communicate with their employees and help the employees feel more engaged. So how do you do that? Communication and trust. Companies that communicate more effectively with employees have a lower turnover rate than those who communicate less effectively. And look at that, it's almost 20%. So communication is key. Even if times are bad, it's much better to communicate about those struggles than just not to say anything. And many of us probably remember the recession that happened in 2008 through about 2012. That really hit Michigan hard. But the companies that communicated about the struggle that they were having and how important employees were and what they were wanting to do, and maybe gave other perks, days off, whatever it might be, they were able to be, if they're honest and say, this is what we're facing, this is what we need you to do, then they had much better engagement and reaction from their employees than those that did not do that. So different ways to do that a PR person could use is, of course, the company newsletter. Many of them are done electronically these days. Some still print them, but having that information from management to employees is still very, very important. There could be bulletin boards, traditional or electronic ones that we have in all the apps and different methods that we have today to communicate. Suggestion boxes still work, having them in a lobby somewhere where suggestions are sent back to management. Videos, town hall meeting, face-to-face communication. There's nothing quite like hearing directly from your president or your CEO. But also we also have website and email and blogs as another good way for management to communicate with employees. So it's important to know what to communicate. You want to communicate what your goals are for that year, your plans. Second one is so important. Your employees should hear about news first from management and not from the media or from other sources. So your information should be delivered to your employees first. So if you're making a big employee change with maybe the top person, the president or CEO, if you're buying a new plant, or if you're starting a new product or whatever it might be, inform your employees first and then start informing everyone else. Ask employees for feedback. They want to be heard. They're the ones on the front lines. They know what needs to be fixed. If there's something negative or controversial, you know what? Covering it up or not talking about it does not ever stop anyone else from not talking about it. Okay, so just because you're not talking about it doesn't mean that they are not. So that's just going to let rumors spread. It's more important to talk about things directly than to cover them up. Also, make sure that you have some established intervals for communication and for reviews of employee work. So I think that employees should be hearing from their top management pretty often throughout a year. I don't think it should be once a year. I think it should be more often than that. So it's important that you set up those intervals so that you don't forget and don't get carried away with not communicating with your employees. And again, a great one is a good atmosphere at work, having a fun, relaxing space where people can go when they need a break. having a lunchroom, having employee daycare, whatever it might be. There's all kinds of examples that you will have heard about as well. Ben and Jerry's, the ice cream, they used to let employees take home ice cream for free, things like that. I would gain a lot of weight if I did that. So, also, trust is important. You can fool some of the people some of the time. 20% of employees believe that their organizations do not tell them the truth. 50% of employees say their companies generally tell employees the truth. And 50% of employees believe that their employers try too hard to spin the truth and not to really just be honest and open about it. They try to make it seem like it's something that it's not. So trust is important. Show employees that they can trust management. And one way to do that is to be open with information, as I've already said. Tell your employees where you think the organization is headed. And it does take time for especially new leaders to build trust with their employees. So some steps. Consider employees your number one audience. Your employees should be the number one audience that you communicate with. Many times they're the number one overlooked audience because they're just there and companies forget to communicate with them. But remember that your employees are your ambassadors. Survey your employees and find out what they're thinking and how they feel about their jobs. Create improved relationships with management. Have those regular intervals where you can hear from employees. Train your managers to be good communicators. Most of them are not. If it's something really sensitive or important, use face-to-face communication. And as always, show appreciation to your employees. Okay, so that is the end of that chapter. So now let's talk about entertainment, sports, and tourism. This is a fun, growing part of the business world because we are a very celebrity-driven culture. And also there is a growing interest in careers in sports, entertainment, and hospitality among PR students. My husband actually runs the sports management program at Rochester University, and I do a lot of the PR stuff. And so we have lots of students that are PR majors and then maybe sports management minors, or they take some of his classes just to learn more about that industry, especially in this town where we have so many sports teams around us. So there's that growing interest, but there's also that cult of celebrity around us. Here's Michael Strahan, who of course was a big sports NFL player, but he's really become omnipresent, it seems like, all over ABC on Good Morning America, and he's on, I don't know, he was on the not Regis and Kathy Lee, Kelly Ripa show. He was the co-host for a while before he went to Good Morning America. But anyway, he's an entertainer who has a big following. There's a research device called the Q Score that a lot of marketing companies use, and he's ranked pretty high with the Q Score. You can do some research on that if you want to see who the highest ones are. In sports right now, because I just looked for another class, 3 of the top 5 sports heroes around the world are soccer players. LeBron James is up there as well. But we have that with TV, movie, music, all those things, the royal family, politicians. There is that cult of celebrity that we have around us. The entertainment industry, you can serve as a publicist, trying to get word out about a new band or a new performer or an artist. Sometimes because of some of the nature of the entertainment industry, you have to do damage control. Someone may do something unethical or improper, and as a PR person, you would have to try to control that situation, whether it's a Charlie Sheen type situation or Tiger Woods when he was going through his issues as well. So there's a lot of ethical issues and things that you would have to deal with if you're serving as a publicist. You could be promoting a personality. If there's I've just put Greta Van Fleet on here because they're, of course, from Frankenmuth and a newer band that's made it big. They were, have done well over the past year or so. So if you were their publicist, you would be, trying to get them interviews, and you would need to know who they were and what their goals were and develop bios and all of them and have a media kit. A lot of that would be done online. Um, what kind of, what do you want to sell to people? What is their image that they're wanting, and who's the target audience? And so all of those things, and you'd be working with reporters and trying to get publicity about them through YouTube and websites and media coverage as well. A lot of corporations and sports and teams, they do a lot of community service, and community relations is a big part of PR. So the Pistons have a big, going to different schools and reading programs. So maybe it's a reading program that you're trying to conduct a campaign about that, and you put together news releases and photo opportunities, and you set it up for them to go to area schools, and you have the kids and promote it with media following it and taking photos. And so all those public appearances that are important just to building engagement between your sports team and your community. So a lot of times with an entertainment event, it's a drip, drip, drip technique, where there's a repetition and steady output of information. So let's, for example, say that there's a movie being filmed. So you would be a publicist, and you would have photographers, maybe some video, while the movie is actually being filmed. And so you're communicating that to maybe some loyal audiences, or maybe on TV and just websites about the actual, that, hey, this movie is in the works. And then once it's getting closer to when it's going to be released, then you may have your actors, actresses, directors going out and doing interviews and communicating, sending out photos, having a website that goes along with your movie. And then, of course, going right up to the release day, you'd have some advertising, promotions, word of mouth, and more interviews, just to get that information out about this new movie that's coming out, and why people need to go see it. But it's drip, drip, drip. It doesn't just all happen at once. Many times, especially in an entertainment event, it happens over amount of time. A concert is coming to town, so you hear about it when the tickets go on sale. And then I've seen something recently, and the Rolling Stones are going to be here, so I've seen advertising and in print and on web about them coming. And in fact, they had full page ads in the newspaper, and you can tell my demographic. So just that kind of thing, but it's already drip, drip, drip. I don't think they're coming till the summer, but we've already heard about it for the last month or so. So there can be also promoting entertainment event. You have you're planning publicity stories about clients and projects. You're trying to get clients on talk shows and other public appearances. Maybe you're trying to get a product tie-in with fast food, whether it's with a movie or with a celebrity, something like that. There's a lot of those kind of tie-ins that happen that you see all over the place as well. It could be an Instagram influencer. It's not just the movie industry anymore, the music industry. We're having people who are becoming famous just because they are on YouTube or on Instagram, and they are influencers. And so companies, and maybe it's I'm a painter, or sort of a aspiring painter, and so I follow different art supply companies, and many of them use some famous artists to try to sell product, and YouTube videos that tell you how to do something, that kind of thing, how to use a palette knife when you're painting landscape or whatever it might be. So a lot of companies, no matter the product that they're selling, they are using these tie-ins to help do that. So here's back to the drip, drip, drip. Have you seen the latest blockbuster? 73% of the moviegoers said they first heard about a movie through TV ads. 52% went to the internet when they wanted to know more about a movie. 62% get information reviews from the internet. 51% of moviegoers rarely rely on critics. They rely on reviews from friends and family. So it's kind of just that whole drip, drip, drip that we've been talking about. Sports publicity, sports publicists, they do the normal PR stuff that everyone else does, but they also try to put that emotion into it, because we have an emotional connection to our teams. I don't know if you heard, but in Detroit this past, we're the most losing, we've gone the longest having losing streak with our 4 major teams than any other city ever. So it's kind of hasn't been a great time for us here around Detroit, but maybe that'll be turned around someday. But you can still promote heroes and stars for your teams. One thing that's important with sports publicity is to manage any kind of crises that might occur. With it could be tragically we've heard about the death of players. Kobe Bryant with the Lakers. There was the Anaheim Angels pitcher who died. So these things happen, and it will be a publicist and a PR person that helps handle those crises and getting information to the right people and just helping deal with that. It could just even be more of a crisis in a negative way where someone's sexual assault or that's happened in the NFL quite a bit. So there's all kinds of things of crises that happen that a PR person would be involved in helping deal with that crisis. Also, you can stimulate public interest in teams and players. You're trying to help sell tickets, getting corporate sponsors, selling souvenirs and clothing, all of those things. We have a lot of examples of that right here in Detroit with the Red Wings, Tigers, Pistons, and Lions, where they will have players going to the local Meijer or wherever it might be, Dunkin' Donuts, Tim Hortons, to make appearances because they're a corporate sponsor. So those are all things that community relations PR people are involved in. Then there's the travel industry. It's a huge industry. 759 billion. 1 out of every 9 jobs in the U.S. is related to travel. And usually what a travel person is doing, a PR person, is getting people to want to go somewhere, a desire to visit a certain place, whether it's pure Michigan or going to Florida, whatever it might be. And you can do that online and in travel publications and programs. And then there's the ones that help the traveler reach the destination. So this is the packaging, the tour booking. And then making sure that the tourists are having a good time when they are present at your location. So travelers, more and more people are traveling. Generation Y makes up 12% of all U.S. leisure travelers and 13% of business. Family travelers make up 30% of U.S. adult leisure travelers. Members of Gen X make up 31% of all leisure travelers and 36% of business. And 36% of leisure travelers are age 60 or older. So that helps you know who your demographic is, your buyer persona, so that you know who you're targeting with your promotional material. And travel promotion, you need to appeal directly to your target audience, as I just said. There's a lot of packaging that's going on where there's a company that might help a family package everything from their flights to their cruise to the excursions that they take. And so it's not, with a tour guide and all that. So there's a lot of those that are very popular. REI has done some just with their, using their equipment, but also, ecotourism and that type of thing. But also tourism in time of crises. There are crises, just, the one we've all heard about lately with the Americans that were on the cruise ship in Japan and Thailand and near China, and how they, because of the coronavirus, no one was allowed to leave the ship, and the U.S. government had to go in and evacuate them, and keep them in isolation to see if they had the coronavirus or not. It could be an airplane crash. There's all kinds of things that can happen in a crisis. People sitting on an airplane on the runway for 8 hours. We hear those kind of stories often, fortunately not all the time. But those are kind of some of the types of crises that a travel person might deal with. So that's it for this section. I hope it's been interesting to you. And your book has a lot more information, so be sure and read that as well. Thanks.